Yo, what it did, y'all. Let's talk about that announcement, right? Or more specifically, we're going to talk about how to extend our love for the game. Only because with what now will be the sixth time that we find out that our current league is a 4 month league instead of the traditional 3 month league that a lot of us may be more familiar with, it's a good time to just take a step back, look at how we play the game and how we can extend that further because the complaint usually comes in with the idea that the way to play the game is a seasonal game. The spikes at the start are fucking fantastic. And being told there's another month or so until the spike is rough because we're like, oh, I gotta wait even longer, man. I hate it. And I understand that sentiment. Having to wait to play the thing that you always want to play, the thing that's always constantly in the back of your mind sucks. And so as a result of that, we have to evolve. I had to evolve, right? I've been through this already. And the last couple of leagues have really just been me figuring out how to add longevity in places that I previously didn't really have longevity in my league experience for. So let's talk about that. As I'm getting ready to get into it though, if you like these type of videos, like the video, it helps me a lot with what I need to be making content about. And subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of what I do here. Anyways, let's talk, right? Number one tip that I can really give is expanding how you play the game. And that sounds like it's going to be the only tip throughout this video. It's the overarching theme of everything that I'm going to talk about here because there's a lot of different ways to expand how we play the game. The number one way, the way that I did it first, was going for more leagues of play, right? If I identify that the experience really is at its best when I'm going through the rigmarole and the wear and tear of progression, be it character progression, atlas progression, system progression, etc., then I just need to get more of that in. So it's do the main league start, and then maybe I move to SSF later. Then I start jumping in the private leagues. Then maybe I migrate out my SSF and go back into SSF again. Just simply giving myself more restarts. That was the first way that I really learned to extend my gameplay time. And if you're wondering where you find private leagues at, I mean, there is a private league that has on the PoE site. I don't know if that is actually functional. I would keep more of an eye on, say, like Reddit or various streamers and different discords and communities and whatnot, such as like the PoE Community Racing Discord, for example, to look for announcements for leagues such as BPL, Bingo. Manny does a group found every league. There's Pain League that's been happening for the past like 2 years, I think now, etc. There's Reservoir League, etc. There's a lot of private leagues out there that go on and start at different times, or even if you have a group of friends that you play with, like, hey guys, we should do a private league. Let's mess around a little bit. Let's add some challenges for ourselves to play with, especially when you start to factor in either new goals you haven't really considered before, such as again the unique collection that Manny does each week, or you can think of things such as like playing with the modifiers that are on private leagues. Really just finding a way to add another way for you to play the game, find more time to play the game in that environment. Otherwise, you could take the additional time and use it to really push yourself in an environment that you've already played in, right? It could be that you're an SF player and the extra month is just more time for you to work on your unique completion. It could be that you're a trade player and the extra month is time for you to think about testing stuff in trade for potential money making opportunities in a future league. I remember doing this a couple of leagues back, actually in Tota, where I used a lot of the extended time that I played the league to work on learning more about currency making strategies in the modern era. Strategies I had already tried before in the past, but I wanted to learn more about their current iterations, especially with new keystones being added. Right? There's angles here that you can work to further extend into the one avenue that you do like. I think it's worth noting, though, that you should consider expanding your avenues. And this is going to be number two of like ways that I really recommend expanding how you play, and it's just challenging yourself. I'm going to break this into two sections: content and builds. So, content in particular here talks about the leagues that you play in. If you're a trade only player, I'm going to challenge you to try out SSF or to try out private leagues. And I did this last league, and I'm going to probably keep doing this every so often just to like put the challenge out there to try out other modes, because there are things that you learn about Path of Exile in those environments of higher pressure, more restrictions that you don't actually get access to in other ways. Talking about, learning how to work on lower resources, which then benefits your other way of playing. In trade, you learn a lot about what the actual resources themselves do. A great part of being in trade, this league, for example, is knowing a ton about what the corpses feel like, or how the lantern is really modifying gameplay in terms of currency making strategies, what T17s are really capable of doing in terms of currency generation, or just talking about creating gear for the absolute top end of your existing builds, right? There's a lot of things that trade offers you that you can then use as the blueprint for what you want to aim for in a more restrictive environment. Whereas then you can use the restrictive environment to learn things such as how to progress better when you actually have to farm the content. What makes certain content so valuable in terms of what it generates, right? It's very easy to overlook certain mechanics in terms of their core value to the game when you're only playing from trade. For example, Expedition gets a ton more value when you're not in trade because of its ability to create incredible rare items through ROG, as well as base fishing and unique Gamba through Gwenin, as well as our ability to get raw currency out of Tujin. You've got all three reasons to utilize it, as opposed to Gwenin is a bit of a more of a crapshoot in trade, and ROG falls off in value relative to just the power of actual crafting in trade relatively early. Usually a weekend, it was even sooner this time around with the cropless crafting mechanic, right? So you get to experience the game from a couple other angles, or you get to think about the game from the perspective of like, what if you have a group working together? And it's actually when I started to really understand the power of what makes group play so effective is playing in my own little group in private leagues and be like, wow, it's actually really efficient when you have several people farming towards one goal. And obviously it's like, well, no, duh, Captain Obvious. But again, sometimes it just, the lesson clicks a little differently when you do it as opposed to when you hear about it, right? The other side of this challenge is to play builds that you're unfamiliar with, right? Or builds that you're familiar with, but in a different way. So a really good example here, or for just like from my past, quite frankly, is I went on a challenge many leagues ago, many leagues ago, to create skeleton builds. The idea just being, how well do I understand generic scaling methods such that I could then plug and play skills, plug and play ascendancies, even in some cases, to really extend the different breadth of builds that can be played. For example, the bow tree is a pretty stock standard tree when you think about it from the perspective of a Deadeye, but Deadeye is not the only ascendancy that supports projectile attack skills. Champ can support it, Slayer can support it, Assassin can support it. In some iterations, even Trickster can support it, right? And it's just based on proximity to the nose on the tree that we know we find valuable. Or if you're a caster enjoyer, I know I have POBs dating back to as far as like Arc them of just power charge scaling cores, where it's just a generic like 85 point tree that works for pretty much every power charge scaling build in the game. It was pretty hard for that not to work there, and it therefore created a core for me to start experimenting with skills that I hadn't played before, or moving it between ascendancies to try out some other different defensive and offensive methods that I had available to me, right? So playing in that sphere, or even more specifically, archetypes you just straight up haven't played. Like recently, I've gone back to starting to play melee more in recent leagues. Last league I played Bone Shatter. This league I tried out Frostblades, to some discontent, but it's important for me to learn why the discontented me, to keep an eye out for things that'll make it feel better in the future, or for things that I could do differently in the future, right? To give myself a fighting chance to actually like the archetype again at some point. And that's kind of the point, is these challenges give me ways to learn about the game. And I think that's the overarching feel. Not I think, I know that's the overarching theme of how I extended my enjoyment of the game. It's that when the league got longer, I felt like there was another month roughly of time being added where I wasn't learning in this game anymore. And Path of Exile is a game where I feel I'm at my best and at my happiest when I'm constantly learning, evolving, trying new shit out. And so I found a way to add that to the game for myself. Whether, and you might think I don't really want to like sit here and study and learn that much. And I would contend that you probably do a little bit of it, just not as intentionally as you think, right? There's always something fun about learning a new league mechanic, learning a new way to make currency, learning a new build, learning that your favorite old skill actually has a new way of being played, right? Going back and learning something is has always felt pretty good. It feels satisfying. It feels, mastery of Path of Exile just feels fantastic. Again, at least for me. Maybe you don't really care for all that shit, but that's what I'm here for. And so adding that time really let me focus on learning more. I just had to be conscious and aware to make that decision. So where does that leave us, right? What that means is that this next month or so for me is more learning time. I have more builds that I need to try out in modern era because you guys have seen, if you've seen the channel recently, you know that I've been on a kick of talking about build viability, what makes builds good. We're going to start talking about what makes builds bad soon as well, in terms of just things to learn, things that I've learned from testing, as well as I'm working on builds that I haven't touched in a while. Learning this stuff environment, or specifically right now, I'm learning more about the league start environment with all the new changes to league starting that came this league between campaign changes, the Atlas changes, actually some of the things that I'm going to talk about later on about what this league itself has actually done for league starting, because there's some incredible benefits. The Necropolis itself is contributing to the league start environment that I do think GTG needs to look at moving core, and it might not be front facing in the discussion. And that's really where we're headed. Now, I have one last suggestion for you before we wrap down the video, and it's relevant to what I'm going to be doing over the next little while as well, but just always a good recommendation to keep in mind is that it's not a sin to leave Path of Exile and go play something else, right? It's not a sin to take some time to just go, you know what? Hands up. I'm done with this league. I'm going to go explore some other stuff. Or more specifically, especially if you're like me, you're an ARPG nut. You probably played the D4 season when that came out for a day or two, right? Maybe you're like D4 bad, but I bought it already, so I might as well try it type of vibe. Or you bought into Last Epoch, and Last Epoch has got a new thing coming up about a month from now, right? So you might experiment with that as well. And I say it's relevant too because I will be playing with the new cycle in a month's time, because it's something new to do, something to give me some time off from PoE for a little bit, etc. And I just want to let y'all know that this video is not me slamming you. If you feel like, I don't want to play 4 months, it's probably not good for you. I probably can't recommend that anyways. But I wanted to take this time to talk about potential ways to extend your enjoyment of the league rather than complain like everybody does, including myself, about the fact that our leagues have gotten longer and there's like seemingly nothing we can do about it. Anyways, that wraps it all up for me, right? If you like this video, again, liking the video helps me a lot, so if you know what you like from me, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of what I do here, especially if you're interested in more of the build related stuff. Those links for other videos will be, around the screen and all that good stuff. You should see all of that, as well as if you want to find me elsewhere, I do have a Twitch. I do not stream as frequently as you might think. I really only stream for events and special occasions. But that link will be in the description down below. The place to reach me more actively is definitely in my Discord. I'm very active there. And so that'll also be in the description down below. Thank you for watching. And let me know, what do you do to make the league last longer for yourself? If you do anything, right? What type of goals are you really setting for yourself as the league goes on to keep yourself in it? Anyways, though, I gotta go. It's time for more blasting for me. I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace.